Ladies and gentlemen, the next session, a discussion with Stephanie Cutter, Harold Ford Jr., and Anna Navarro, is sponsored by Delta Airlines. Please welcome political strategist, founder of Precision Strategies, former deputy campaign manager for Obama 2012, and former White House deputy senior advisor to President Obama, Stephanie Cutter. Former U.S. representative and political analyst for MSNBC and CNBC, Harold Ford Jr. And GOP strategist and political contributor for ABC News, CNN, and Telemundo, Anna Navarro.
So thank you again to the Detroit Regional Chamber and to Sandy and to all of the leadership of this great organization for having me back, and thank you for having all of us. It seems appropriate that this conversation would take place after the presentation we just heard. Stephanie, you are accomplished in this field, as Anna is as well. You've advised presidential candidates, secretaries of state, United States senators.
Her candidates have won.
She's had both ways, but she's had more on the upside. You said something about this Trump win shortly after it happened, and you answered in the Detroiter magazine that's on everyone's chairs out there that you didn't see Donald Trump having a mandate. We've heard Governor Snyder talk about how it's the importance of bringing people together to get things done, and hopefully you can rally around an agenda. Do you think his lack of, well, first of all, how do you define not having a mandate? And if you don't have one when you start, can you capture one while you're in office and get things done?
Well, I guess let's level set on the idea of a mandate. Very few presidents are elected with a mandate. And that's not, I think, a good governing philosophy to go into office thinking I have a mandate so I can do whatever I want. I don't need to reach across the aisle. President Obama, arguably in 2008 was elected with a mandate. But that's not how he entered office in terms of how he wanted to govern. Lots of things happened. It didn't turn out Republicans wanted to work with President Obama, so things got pretty divided. But that's not how he approached his job. That is how President Trump is approaching his job, in that he has a mandate. I mean, have you heard anybody ever talk about their electoral votes as much as this man? And it's proving to be divisive. He's at 36, 39% in approval rating, which means he's carrying his base and no one else, which means that not many people are going to want to come to the table and work with you on an issue, which means not much gets done. So it becomes a negative cycle. Can he change that? Sure. You can create a mandate through persuasion and winning over public support, going out and arguing your case, not by trashing or disparaging somebody else, but making the case for what you think this country needs to do. And that's also, unfortunately, not the track that we're on.
Anna, you said shortly thereafter that you saw the partisan divide in the country so fierce that in the short term, you didn't see a reconciliation could happen. Do you still feel that way? And how do we get out of that rut if we're going to get things done in Washington?
I still do feel that way. I was thinking a couple of hours ago about what's happened in the last 7 days. And in the last 7 days, we had a Republican candidate for Congress body slam, beat up a reporter, and go on to win. We had a white supremacist insult some women because they look different than him and kill 2 good Samaritans who came to their defense. And we had Kathy Griffin, a comedian, holding up a severed bloody head of the President of the United States. And just to me, all 3 things are horrible and are a symbol of the hate, of the anger, of the passion gone awry, of the partisanship that we have right now. But half the people thought the candidate beating up the reporter was a good thing. Some people, a lot, are defending Kathy Griffin and what she did. It's First Amendment, an artistic expression, Don't you remember when Ted Nugent asked for President Obama to be hung? All those things are true, but to me, all three things are absolutely horrible and worry me tremendously about where we are as America. And not only do I think there's a partisan divide, I think there's an intra-party divide, definitely in the Republican Party. Right now, we've got some folks who are Trump-publicans. We've got old-fashioned mainstream Republicans. You know, we're like in a little island. Mitt Romney.
You're on that island?
Hell yes, Mitt Romney, till I get deported. Mitt Romney and you know, Jeb Bush and folks like that are like in a cave inside the island. You know, John Kasich is hawking a book somewhere on the island. John McCain and Lindsey Graham are living off the land on the island. And, you know, and I'm just drinking.
The two of you have grown up around, and I say grown up in the sense of maturing, and your commercial and personal lives are so intertwined with politics. What has happened in politics over the last 10, 15, 20 years? Because you asked the question, Stephanie, of Anna right before we went on. Her answer surprised me a little bit. I'm going to take a personal liberty. I'm not exposing too much here, and if I have, I hope you guys forgive me. But Stephanie said, you know, a lot of people think that people on TV, those you may disagree with, you know, that you may not get along with, but you do get along with them. And Stephanie said, I'm going to make this point. Anna said, well, I don't know if I agree with that because my experience may be a little different now. I don't want a direct answer of individual names, but I'm curious, what has happened in politics where, you know, this kind of nastiness, I mean, the fact that someone could be body slammed and no politicians, people are afraid to come out and say, the Speaker of the House couldn't say, not only was this guy wrong, but I'm going to have a conversation with him when he gets here. What's wrong with politics? Are we training operatives or candidates the wrong way or differently than we did 5 years, 15 years ago, 25 years ago?
Well, I'll tell you my experience and why I was making that statement, that, you know, I've run presidential campaigns, I've run Senate races, I've worked in the White House, I've worked for majority leaders, and worked up against some really talented Republicans. And, you know, during the day, we go hard and win our battles. But at night, we were always friends. And that was never talked about. If you told somebody that story outside of Washington, they'd be like, oh, come on, that is not true. You cannot be friends with Matt Rhodes, who ran the Romney campaign in 2012. He is actually one of my good friends. Or Steve Schmidt, who ran the McCain campaign in 2008. Good friend. You know, Anna and I are on TV together. We haven't known each other that long, but we're friends. It's because you can have a point of view. Ted Kennedy said to me once, I worked for Senator Kennedy for a long time out of college, and he really taught me the most about politics of anybody that I've worked for. And nobody could argue harder than Ted Kennedy for his point of view. You've all seen it on C-SPAN. But he said you can argue against somebody's opinion, but you cannot impugn his motive. And you cannot believe he's coming from a bad place. You don't know anything about him. You can disagree with him, but do not impugn his motive. And that's how he operated every single day in the Senate. He would go down on the floor and you know, beat the crap out of Orrin Hatch for his position on children's health care. They would find their way to work together. But he never said to Orrin Hatch, you don't care about children, or, you know, you'd rather take care of this person than this three-year-old sick child. That's not what we do today. We take it so much further today than we did even just, you know, Ted Kennedy's been dead since 2009, and we go for the jugular. And, you know, I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think that, you know, we're living in a digital age. You know, you can say things about people and never have to show your face. That makes a difference. You don't have to stand up and defend what you say. You can do it anonymously. You know, we've got 24-hour cable, you know, on nonstop. It gets heated, and constantly having to debate these issues can send you right down a spiral into the drain. And I think that as the country grew more divided for a variety of reasons, our politics have grown more divided. Now we have a president whoever thought we would be where we are today, where you have a president tweeting out disparaging tweets, insulting his FBI director, insulting foreign leaders in 140 characters. That is a whole new level of politics.
Well, also, when Stephanie said that, there's this dirty little secret about how we're actually all friends, I said to her, I don't agree. That's not true anymore. And I think
said anymore. You meant, but
I said anymore because I think the people. Donald Trump was not taken seriously by anyone when he started running. I'm not even sure he himself took it seriously. But certainly his primary opponents didn't take him seriously. The media didn't take him seriously. And so, seasoned political veterans did not go work for Donald Trump, were not his surrogates. You couldn't find people to go on TV and be Donald Trump's surrogates. So you found basically, if there was anybody you could find who was breathing, even if they weren't even breathing deeply, just breathing, barely, but was willing to go defend Donald Trump, they could be Trump surrogates. The people Stephanie is talking about are folks that are seasoned political veterans that have gone through battles and war together, maybe on different sides, but there's this level of, we've fought the battle and we know what it's like to lose. I don't know what it's like to win, but I've seen people who know what it's like to win. I know people that know what it's like to win. And so I think it's different. Right now, what you see, particularly on cable TV, is a breed of surrogate, and I think you see it in the White House too, where there can be no admission of fault, no admission of error, no admission of human flaw. Everything has got to be defended to the nth degree, or it's punishable by political death. And so I think it's changed the nature of those green room dynamics that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. I told you, you're not on daily cable TV now. It's different. Mm-hmm. It's different.
So as much as we say these things, voters are still voting for people, and voters voted for Donald Trump. What is it that, in light of what you just said, and I get a sense, Stephanie, where you're coming from, why did voters in this state, in Ohio, in Wisconsin, go to the polls in Pennsylvania and cast their vote for the first time in a very long time for a Trumpocrat, a Republican, whatever you want to call him? What was it that stood out about him? And what does it say about the American people and their desire and appetite for a different kind of politics? In other words, are we missing it? And the people are getting it.
This was such a surreal, strange election that I find that question very hard to answer because there is not one answer for it, right? I think you have to give Donald Trump credit for his media savviness. I think you've got to give him credit for being a New York billionaire who has his pulse on the Republican base, has his pulse on the working voter and what they want to hear, that they want somebody that wanted to fight for them, that was as angry and as frustrated as they felt. I think you've got to say something about the flaws of Hillary Clinton and of her campaign. I still can't get over that this campaign might have been brought down by a sex scandal not involving Bill Clinton, but rather Anthony Weiner. You also can't have a discussion about what happened without discussing Russia. We don't know the answer. We'll never know what the effect was. We know they didn't hack the ballot machines, the Russians, but we know there was interference and we know there was propaganda, and it's immeasurable what the effect of that was. It's immeasurable what the effect of Comey was. We could go crazy talking, and seriously, if I was Hillary Clinton, I wouldn't be drinking on the island. I'd be drinking in the woods in Chappaqua, because you could go crazy thinking about the what ifs, and it was such few votes in a handful of states that any one of those what ifs could have made a difference. So I just don't. I think it's such a hard answer, such a hard answer.
And I think it's a hard answer because, and I'm sure there are Trump supporters in the room, and I don't mean to you put words in your mouth or disparage your support for Trump. But I think, as Anna said, nobody took Trump seriously at the beginning of this election cycle. And he wasn't taken seriously, even by the media, who were giving him hundreds of millions of dollars of free advertising in the way they covered him, weren't taking him seriously as a candidate. They just knew that he was going to increase their ratings. And lo and behold, he starts winning primaries. You start winning primaries, you've got the wind at your back. It's pretty hard to stop somebody at that point. And he's the Republican nominee. He's still not really taken seriously. His numbers in terms of approval ratings stayed in the low 40s. The Republican Party wasn't embracing him. He didn't have much of a campaign apparatus. Hillary Clinton had this vaunted turn out the vote operation driven by the best data any campaign had ever seen. And here was somebody who was a former Secretary of State, former senator, had spent years in the White House, who had racked up accomplishments and people saw as a leader versus a reality TV star. How could she possibly lose? Well, I think that people didn't realize how much change people really wanted. And were willing to put aside all of the foibles that we've been talking about, whether it's the Access Hollywood sex tape or his, calling his fellow candidates losers, and I don't even want to get into the other names they call him.
Little Marco,
Ted,
low energy Jeb.
Or
Crooked Hillary.
Crooked Hillary, or the mistakes that he would make about policies or politics or world leaders, or people were willing to put all of that aside because they just wanted change. They wanted to burn down the village to save the town, and were willing to do whatever it took to get there. So it's not that they were looking at Donald Trump and saying, I like everything about you, I'm going to vote for you. They were like, okay, you're the guy that's going to be able to blow things up. And then we'll see. It can't get any worse than it is now, so let's see what happens.
So name me, he's had 100-some days now. Give me one, we'll talk negative about him. I'm going to play devil's advocate, which is going to be difficult to do here. But give me a positive about Donald Trump. Give me 2 positives about Donald Trump. Make it hard.
No, I can. I mean, I can give you more than that in positives. Look, if you're a Republican,
Okay, give me some positives.
If you're a Republican, you are very happy with Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court.
Gorsuch?
That's something that he promised and he delivered. I think one of the smartest things he did in the entire campaign was put out that list of names that he would pick from if he got elected to the Supreme Court. I think if you are a policy hawk Republican, you are very happy with the appointment of somebody like a Mattis as Secretary of Defense. I'll tell you what I think, and I'll tell you some other positives that I think have happened. One is, I think he has changed for the better, and this is going to sound strange, the dynamic with the press. The press had gotten, and you can speak about this better, the press had gotten chummy with the White House. The White House the correspondence dinner, the Easter egg roll, the whatever, the this, the that. I think because the relationship now is so contentious, and that is a negative, certainly, but I think the positive, the silver lining of that is that the press has gone back to what is the core of journalism, being fact finders and sticking to the truth. And I think there's this new resoluteness in true journalists. I'm not talking about fake news on one side or extreme news on the other. The other thing I think has happened in this country is that I would say is positive is that something has awoken. It's hard not to see it in the streets. There was a time when I used to carry high heels in the trunk of my car because I never knew when I had to go to a party. Well, hell, now I carry tennis shoes because I never know when I have to show up at a protest. Something has awoken
Wait a minute.
in America. And, I think we'd kind of fallen asleep at the wheel. We'd taken democracy for granted. And people are right now very in tune with politics, very in tune with news. And, it might be one extreme or the other, but they are very aware of everything that is going on.
I'm going to add to this. What's the lesson Democrats
Wait,
take
ask
in 16?
Stephanie to come up with a couple of positive.
I am.
I mean, that was a hard question, right?
You struggled
You
hard
took all
enough.
my
I'm going to give her a
answers.
big, but I want to make this sort. Democrats, Anna said something earlier about the race was close in certain states, and I've heard some Democrats say, well, we shouldn't be too worried. We won the popular vote, and I hear that message, and it sounds silly to me because it makes it sound as if Democrats picked up seats in the Senate or picked up seats in the House or won gubernatorial seats, but they lost everywhere. So what I think, give me my bias, I think there's a bigger lesson, but what is the lesson that Democrats learned from this race, and how do they get better for the sake of their constituents and for the sake of winning elections in 18 and 20?
Well, number one, never take anything for granted. I mean, we might have lost the electoral vote, but we won the popular vote. So what? That's not how you elect presidents. And we could have won the electoral vote if we had spent some time in Michigan, if we had spent some time in Wisconsin, if we had paid attention to what people were telling us in Pennsylvania. And oh, by the way, they were all saying the same thing. So I think we learned the lesson that you have to go out and talk to people, that this is not, you can't win presidential elections through advertising. Or traveling around and doing tarmac rallies with celebrities. You have to get out there and work it. And I think if we had done that in Michigan and paid attention to what we were hearing on the ground in Michigan, we would have won. And a good friend of mine, who I'm sure everybody here is also a good friend of, Debbie Dingell, we worked in Michigan together back in 2000, during the Gore campaign, and she was sending up red flags then. Michigan, something's not right. You guys need to spend time here. It was very, very close back then, to everybody's surprise. Gore ended up winning Michigan thanks to Debbie. Those same red flags were being sent up this time, and nobody would take the call. And it is just, the loss of Michigan for Democrats is just sheer malpractice. And same thing for Wisconsin. Because if you look at, if you look at what the people care about, or for the voters that we lost care about, they care about, they suffer from what a lot of people suffer from across this country, economic anxiety. I might have a job now, but what happens if I lose my job? I don't have a plan B. This is it. How am I going to send my kid to college? How am I going to pay my mortgage? That economic anxiety, not just from this last economic crisis, but the one before that, still hangs over people. And if we had listened to that and talked about our ideas of how we were going to address that and make it better, we could have won some of those votes. And I think that is a lesson anybody running for president, Democrat or Republican, has to learn, and learn hard for 2020 or 2018. You got to go out and listen to people and understand what they care about, what they're worried about, and figure out how you're going to address it one-to-one.
Two more questions before we look forward. You're going to tell us how we fix this White House. There have been criticisms leveled
at White House.
There have been criticisms leveled at President Obama by some Democrats, saying that he didn't do enough, or his team didn't do enough to help strengthen the Democratic Party. I think the deputy or the vice chairman of the Democratic Party, Keith Ellison, has openly said this recently. What is your reaction to that? And
I think there's truth in that. And look, I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why that's true, but I will also say there's no excuse. But when Obama, looking at it now, you never think that Obama was the outside guy, right? But he was in 2007. He wasn't the establishment candidate. Hillary Clinton was. As a result, we didn't have the party to work within for the 2008 election. So we built OFA, which ran alongside the party, and we created our own basic party system in these states. Obama went on to win the primary. He went on to win the general election. OFA never went away. OFA became part of the DNC, but remained its own entity, and was used as a policy organizing tool for the first term. which meant, they worked to get health care passed, they worked to get financial regulatory reform passed, they worked on clean energy. But the closer we got to re-election, we then took it back out of the DNC, and it became our organizing tool for the re-election effort. So what's the effect of that? The effect is it drained people and resources from the party infrastructure. Now, party infrastructure is very important, but it's not the answer to ensuring that we have more Democrats in elected office. The party infrastructure needed to be updated for a long time. But as a result of that infrastructure that we created, it led to some of the lack of focus and resources in local parties across the country. On top of that, we come into office with the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. We are passing health care. We're doing all of these things. Whether you agree with them or not, they were enormous efforts, which took away attention to political efforts. And God knows, you could say that, passing health care didn't exactly help us politically. So over time, it led to a deterioration of Democrats winning at the state level. There was a lack of a talent pipeline that was developed. We weren't paying attention to census and redistricting, which leads to majority-minority districts, which leads to elections of Republicans, which leads to them to taking over the House, and here we are today. So that's the other lesson out of 2016, is that Democrats realized, geez, we've got to go back to the basics and look at what's happening on the ground and work from the ground up to build that talent pipeline, get people to run for local office, get them to run for statewide office, and let's create a talent pool. And that's happening. Anna said that something has awoken in this country. You're absolutely right. There are more people coming out wanting to run for office because they want to do something about what's happening than, at least in my career, which is 30 years doing politics, of trying to get people to run. We're awash with people that are coming out and wanting to put their name on the ballot.
You said health care, you believe in this next election is going to be the forefront. There's some people believe, and contrary to what Stephanie said, that health care should not have been the first thing that President Obama dealt with. He did. I got to say, in 8 years watching Obama, they didn't make health care as popular as it is today, Obamacare. It seems
right.
like this last 3 or 4 months, Obamacare or Affordable Care has gotten more popular. When you say health care is important, do you like what Republicans are doing to change it? Do you like parts of Obamacare, or do you think just the issue itself, you said it's a personal issue, how do Republicans find a way to get advantage on this issue again?
Harold, Republicans don't like what they've written. I mean, it's been, I think it's been a case study of disaster in every which way. First of all,
Be more candid about it.
Well, look, you guys, if you wanted subtlety, you hire the wrong person. And yes, Donald Trump and the Republicans have done what President Obama, what Barack Obama was incapable of doing. Donald Trump has made Obamacare popular. Look, I think it was very disappointing for a lot of Republicans to see that our leadership had been passing votes to repeal Obamacare for 7 years, and that when they actually caught the bus, they were not ready with a plan that could pass muster. I think that first attempt was very hurtful to the standing of GOP leadership when they failed and when it was revealed to the world just how broken the House is, where you have, the moderates in the Tuesday group, you've got the Freedom Caucus, and you've got a leadership incapable of controlling any of them. And so, then they finally brokered it, got this thing passed, which seemed very rushed. It was also, I think, it's to me, one of the most troublesome things that's happening in politics is the inconsistency and hypocrisy. So you literally can go back and find a Donald Trump tweet for practically anything, criticizing practically anything, that maybe not making up new words in the English language, but practically anything else that he's doing right now that he criticized Obama or Clinton for at some point. And you can do the same exact thing on the Democrat side for practically everything. You know, how many videos did we see of Paul Ryan criticizing Democrats for passing Obamacare too quickly and people not having read it, and you know, it came back to haunt him. I was amazed the other day when I saw so many Democrats in Congress come out and talk so strongly against the strongman and human rights violator of Turkey or the Philippines. Well, nobody was talking about human rights violations when President Obama changed policy towards Cuba. And so the inconsistency that's going on both sides, the hypocrisy, is to me just one of the worst problems that's going on. But back to healthcare. Then they pass it and they spike the football. They go drink beer and celebrate at the Rose Garden. Who celebrates at halftime, folks?
Evidently, the Atlanta Falcons did last year.
I mean, who celebrates at halftime? And, you know, they're doing this while so much of the country is terrified about what's potentially going to be in that bill. When you're hearing so many people go to town halls and cry and scream and shout about their fears and their angst and their distress, pre-existing conditions. So I think the tone deafness of this until now has been astounding to me. It felt as if they just wanted to check off a box of having been able to achieve something by the 100th day. It didn't make it to 100th day, so it was 112th or whatever. That's not the way you do something that's such a serious policy issue as healthcare that affects every single American in the most personal of ways. We're not talking here about, you know, color coding stuff. We're talking about people's lives. And so I don't think it's been a good look for Republicans. I frankly have no idea. It's very hard to talk about the healthcare issue because as we sit here today, we have no idea what is going to end up looking like. And add to all of this healthcare stuff that whether you like it or not, whether you admit it or not, this Russia thing is a hell of a distraction, right? So Congress right now is suffering from ADD because it is very difficult to focus on policy, to focus on foreign policy or domestic policy when there are bombshells and breaking news and revelations and committee hearings. And I mean, I just heard Comey is testifying possibly as early as next week. I haven't looked forward to watching something on TV that much since I was trying to find out who shot JR. And, you know, it's a distraction for the entire country, including Congress.
So let me get this straight. Can anything get done before they get this Russia matter resolved? And perhaps more important, from Ana Navarro's point of view, what's there on Russia? Do you think, is there something that the White House needs to be worried about? Is this a witch hunt? Is it just going to be a fact-finding mission where we determine that indeed the Russians tried to interfere, but there was no collusion? What do you think is there? So 2 parts. Can we do anything before we figure that out? Yes or no?
Who the hell knows?
Do you think something's there?
Yes. And I'll tell you why I think something's there. First of all, I don't know. The question was, do I think? I'm entitled to think. It's, you know, there's just, the buildup at this point is too great, and there's just too many things that are happening. The one thing I can't figure out, and I think about this all the time, and I can't figure out, is the Michael Flynn piece. If, you know, President Obama warned President-elect Trump back then against hiring Michael Flynn. They knew before hiring him, they knew during the transition that there were issues. Elijah Cummings had sent a letter detailing these issues. They then knew about it from Sally Yates, the Deputy Attorney General, for 18 days before they took any action. It wasn't until it became public that they took action. President Trump has been, you know, then we learned that, you know, Comey is saying President Trump tried to talk him out of pursuing the Flynn matter. Then we learned that the same thing happened with Rogers and Coates. At the same time all of this is happening, President Trump is still defending Flynn and, playing email footsie with him. I don't get it, folks. I mean, this is a guy who's divorced 3 wives and fired a hell of a lot of people. What does Flynn represent that there's, that there's this kind of loyalty? I mean, this is not somebody that he's known for 50 years. This is not somebody he's related to or who married somebody he's related to. So it's, I can't figure out why spend so much political capital on defending Michael Flynn, who, whether you are a Republican or Democrat, whether you are a Trump supporter or a Trump opponent, whether you are, conscious or in a coma, you've got to agree the guy did things that are at the least troubling and disturbing and unethical, at the worst criminal and treasonous and dangerous for national security.
Stephanie, I don't want to put you. I mean, I know where you lean a little bit on politics, and if you answer the question, I hope you give us the reasons, like Anna did, which I'm sure you would, about what your thoughts are about some of this stuff. But let's take it a step further. I've heard Democratic friends say, and I'm a Democrat. I heard Democratic friends say, "Well, gosh, I don't know if we want Pence as president. If somehow or another this thing progresses, just to take some. I don't know the answers to any of these questions either. We'll find out. Hopefully, the hearings will bring it all out. But are Democrats worried that President Pence would be better, be worse, would allow for the agenda to be pursued? What's the thinking of Democrats around this Russia matter and what could happen if President Trump has to leave office? And these are big ifs.
Yeah. Well, first we have to see where the investigation takes us. Impeachment is not something that we should be talking about, frankly. Let's see where the investigation takes us. We're just at the beginning of it. And Robert Mueller is taking it seriously, and we have to take him seriously. And Comey's going to testify openly next week. I think where there's smoke, there's probably fire. And something is here that Trump is worried about. Otherwise, they wouldn't have tried so hard to cover it up.
Did you guys talk to Russia during the campaign in 2012 or 2008? Anybody in your campaign?
I'm sure they were listening in on us, but no, I never had a conversation.
You were not actively talking to them?
We knew we were hacked by the Chinese. We did not know we were hacked by the Russians. But we could have been. But no, we had a sitting president, but even in 2008, typically you have one rule in that there is one president at a time. So you don't have those conversations. Even after an election, before an inauguration, you don't have those conversations. So there's something here. We don't know exactly what it is yet, but there's something here. On Pence, I think it is remarkable that a vice president who has so much influence over this White House, and make no mistake, he has a lot of influence, can turn around at every corner and say, God, I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that. I didn't know that he got money from the Turks. I didn't know that there was a conversation with Russia. Oh, yeah, I did meet with that Russian ambassador. There's something there with Pence, too, that I think this investigation will unfold. He's not as innocent. He's either dumb or he's completely kept in the dark. And I don't think either one of those things are true. I think we just haven't gotten to the bottom of it yet. Now, whether Democrats are worried about Pence becoming president, I think Pence is much more ideological than Donald Trump. I think ultimately Donald Trump doesn't really have an ideology. I do think he believes that we have to do more on trade. We have to, he thinks that we've been sort of taken advantage of by other countries. He's been talking about that for 25 years. But in terms of pure ideology, whether it's on women's issues or gay rights or even how you structure health care, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about that and doesn't have an ideology on it. Pence has a real ideology. And yes, there is concern there about rolling back rights and the March for Progress. But frankly, that's going to happen anyway because he has influence over that in the White House. Whether Donald Trump is president or whether Mike Pence is president, he's still achieving that agenda. We haven't been able to stop him yet. So,
well, I think Democrats, be careful what you wish for because you just may get it. And look, with Pence, with Vice President Pence, you get a guy who is ideologically grounded, who knows policy details, right, which President Trump does not, who knows how to work with the legislators, who's got a lot of deep ties and roots to the Republican leadership and the legislative branch, who's got a lot of credibility with important Republican factions. So, look, I've offered all my gay friends asylum in my attic, should it happen. But, be careful, to my Democrat friends, I say to them all the time, be careful what you wish for, because if you get a Mike Pence as president, you're actually going to get a very well-prepared, well-liked, well-accepted by Republicans, and well-informed actual Republican president. Right now, we've got much more of a chameleon.
who has a vice president who is very much pulling the strings on the issues that he cares about. So all I'm saying, be careful what you ask for, absolutely. That's no reason not to see where this investigation takes us. We have to see where the investigation takes us, and I know that's not what you're saying. Because God knows where it's going to lead. You never know at this point. And if there's something there, then the country has a decision to make. Democrats and Republicans have a decision to make. But until we get there, let's deal with what we've got right now.
I think we have to have patience as a country and let the investigation play out. Mm-hmm. I think we've got to all take deep breaths. We've got to be thankful to Acting Attorney General Rosenstein that he was able to appoint something which I thought was miraculous and almost impossible to happen. Somebody that is commended and accepted and respected by both sides of the aisle in Bob Mueller. Look, I call me a romantic, but I still believe that in our democracy, it is very hard to cover things up. So, and these folks, these Trump folks, they like to blab. So, hell, Trump likes to blab. Which is like one of the things I was telling you about inconsistency. I remember when we on the Republican side were outraged when President Obama turned around and told Medvedev, tell Vladimir I will have more flexibility after the election, leaned in and said that to him. And we were all beyond ourselves about it, rightly so, if you ask me. And now I hear some Republicans defending having two Russian spooks, because that Russian ambassador that nobody remembers meeting with because he so blends into the curtains, is known as a recruiter of spies. And they're invited into the White House. The people that we know are in cahoots with Assad in dropping chemical weapons on Syrians. The people that we know interfered in our elections are invited into the Oval Office and given what was, before it was uttered, classified information. So here's what I say to my Republican brethren. If you were rightly indignant by President Obama promising Vladimir more flexibility after the election, you should be rightly indignant at President Trump being more flexible after the election.
Let's take it down a notch and you guys have had such a great political past. I want to ask some quick lightning round here. We got 2 minutes, 20 seconds left.
Cookies, but go ahead.
Of your political work, who's the most fun candidate and exciting candidate to work with?
John McCain. He is a hoot.
Give me the maddest that Barack Obama ever was while you were in the White House, and what issue was it?
He's a pretty cool customer. And I'm not saying that because I worked for him. I think you would agree with me.
Yeah.
He's a pretty cool customer. Doesn't get mad very often. I think he would, get angry with staff when things didn't go right, but it wasn't a screaming mad. The one time I saw him screaming mad, actually, was in the middle of the debt ceiling talks. which went so well. In the fall of 2011, when John Boehner walked away from them.
When John Boehner walked away.
And instead of calling the president that he walked away, we turned on the TV and saw him giving a press conference laying out the reasons why he walked away. This is after a year of negotiations, of bringing both parties, making tough decisions, both of them committing to real things that would have been considered sanctuaries for Democrats, willing to change Social Security on the left, and on the right, willing to put more money into Medicare. So both sides had agreed to make some really tough decisions, all for deficit reduction and raising the debt limit. And then John Boehner just up and decided to walk away from it.
Two names, 2020. Give me the two top names for Democrats to run in 2020. You got 10 seconds.
I knew you were going to ask that.
You got 9 seconds.
I'm prefacing this with it's way too early to tell.
5 seconds.
You're eating up my time. Cory Booker, Kamala Harris.
Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, write it down. If Trump survives and is challenged in 2000, first of all, do you think he'd be challenged in 2020?
Yes.
Who would it be?
Ben Sass or Mitt Romney.
Ben Sass from Nebraska or Mitt Romney from last time Mitt Romney? I'm talking about Mitt Romney.
That Mitt Romney?
He's got Michigan roots, so you better not say bad things about
Ladies
Mitt Romney.
and gentlemen,
And by the way,
Mr. Morrow and Ms. Carter.
two Democrat names, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton.
I love it. Thank you.